How's it going? Today I'm going to show you how to create a multi-step material UI form in just about 100 lines of code. Go ahead and make sure you install the the node packages. And you'll see inside of this component, there are a few JSON schemas that we're going to be using to define the forms for the different steps of the multi-step form. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to open this up with a MUI container. So imported that. This container is going to have a max width of small, a margin top of 4, and a padding of 4. Okay, go ahead and close that. And inside of the container, use a stepper component from the material UI package. And inside of the stepper, I'm just going to add in a few steps. So we'll say step, and then inside, I should probably import that. There we go. And then inside each step, we will have a step label. Cool. That I also need to import. There we go. And we'll say hi, hello, save that, and you'll see there's just a 1 here, and that is because I put this text in the wrong part of the label. There we go. Hi, hello. I'm going to copy paste these steps down here, and instead of hi, hello, we'll say step 1, oh, wrong line, step 2, step 3, and you'll see we have the starting skeleton of our stepper. So this is not how we're actually going to go about doing this. I just kind of wanted to show you how to get the basic outline of the stepper up and running. So what we want to do, we do want to keep track of what part of the form we're at. And in order to do that, we'll need to use a state variable. And that state variable is going to be defined as the active step with a set active step setter that we'll use to update the current step that we're at in the multi-step form, and we're going to initialize that as 0. Now I am getting an error because I did not import useState, so we'll go ahead and do that. So there we go. Now we have useState imported, and the next thing I want to do is I want to use the active step in the stepper. So we'll say that the stepper has the active step of active step, which is currently 0. If I come in here and I manually change this to like 1, you'll see that this gets highlighted and this gets checked. If I come over here and I do 2, same thing goes for that. And I'm pretty sure if I do 3, it'll check off the third step. So we don't want to manually hardcode these. We just want to use the state value. There we go. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to render these labels dynamically. And as a matter of fact, I want to render all the steps dynamically as well. So in order to do that, what we'll do is we'll dump these 3 schemas into a single array. So we'll say const schemas equals open square bracket schema step 1, schema step 2, schema step 3. Okay. And now in the stepper, what we're going to do, we are going to map through these schemas like so. And, oh, there we go. We'll say schema. And for each schema, we will return a step like that. Instead of showing step 1 as the label, we will get the schema title, which you'll see, oh my gosh, which you'll see is defined in each schema. Obviously, this won't work if schema title is not defined. And I'll let you handle making sure that you have a fallback for that. Or you can, if you want, you can do like this. So either schema title or no schema title found bucko. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Oh, that's weird. It needs to actually be like this if you want to have this as a fallback. and then we put this inside of a quotes, and then like let's say there is no title. When we save, no schema found, buckle, not buckle. Let me get rid of these two steps. So that's your fallback if you choose to have one. In my case, I don't choose to have one because I'm going to go under the assumption that there's always schema title, like so. And now you see that the schema titles show up. And we do want to resolve a quick React complaint that we're going to get for sure, which is adding a key. Because this is an array, we want to make sure that React can keep track of what every item in the array is. And to do that, we're just going to use the schema title as the key and hope that all of our schema titles are unique, so that way we're not throwing React off later. So now that we have our stepper, we need to actually be able to step through it. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to open up a div, and we're going to define a box inside that div just for layout purposes. Let me go ahead and close that box. And let me close that div. There, whoop, there we go. Okay, now inside this box, hi. This is not actually what I want, but I'm just showing you like what goes into that box. What we want to do is we want to create two buttons. There is going to be a next button and a back button. So we'll start with the button that goes back. And then it's going to scream at us because we didn't import button. Oh, now we imported button. And Alt Shift down to duplicate that. Change this to next, save, and you'll see we have a back and next button. They don't do anything. They're also shoved right next to each other, which I want to fix real quick. I'm going to do that by putting in another box as a spacer, like so. So now we have next and back buttons that don't do anything. So let's go ahead and add some functionality to have them do stuff. So what we're going to do is underneath the schemas inside the component, we're going to come over here and we're going to define two functions. They are going to be the handle next and the handle back functions, like that. Okay, this one is going to go into our back button, or sorry, our next button, and the other one is going to go into our back button. So in order to step through the stepper, what we want to do, as I showed you earlier, is we want to be able to change the active step value, which determines what step is currently highlighted and what steps have already been finished. So because of that, it goes without saying, even though I'm going to say it, that what we want to do in each one of these step handlers is set the state of the active step. So I'm going to grab that, paste that there, and what we're going to do inside of the setter is we're going to take the current active step, which I guess you would consider the previous active step technically. We're going to set that to prev active step plus 1. So this is for the next. So when we go next, we're adding 1 to the active step. And then for handling back, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to be subtracting 1. And now we can go ahead and use these. So I'm going to control click, grab those. Well, actually, because these are backwards, it's going to be undesirable. So I'll just do this the slow way. So we'll say on click, handle back, save. Now when I click back, you'll see the highlight went away from this because now the active step is not whatever you need for this one to show up as highlighted, which would be 0. So let's add the handle next. So we'll say on click equals handle next, save. And now when we click next, we can actually iterate through the stepper. I do want to handle something real quick, which is the disabled state, because when we, the disabled state for the back button specifically, because when we go back, you can actually keep clicking it, and that's not good. So what we want to do is when you are at the first step, this button should be disabled. So I'm just going to refresh, and there you go. So now when I hit next, it's enabled again. If I hit back, it's now the first step, so it's disabled. And we also want to do something similar for the next button. We want to make sure that the next button, well, first thing we want to do is when we are at the last step, this shouldn't be next. When we're done, this should just say finish or done or whatever. So what we'll do is we'll add a ternary operator inside of this button, the next button, which is basically going to say if the active step is equal to the index of the last step, which even though it's step 3, the index is going to be 2, which is going to be schemas.length, aka 3, minus 1, which is the index, which is 2. Then it's going to render finish. Otherwise, it's going to say next. So we save, and there we go. But now you see once I hit finish, it's finished, but the next button still shows up. So I need to clean that up real quick. So what we're going to do is we're going to say around this button, we're going to add another ternary operator. And all this is doing is saying, well, I need to close the parentheses first. There we go. And all this is saying is that if the active step is less than the total length of the schemas array, then show the button. Otherwise, nothing. So now you see, because the active step is greater than the length of the schemas array, then this actually doesn't show up anymore. But if I hit back, there we go. So inside of this div, I'm going to add a form component, which will be imported from the React.json schema form package /MUI. So React.json schema form does have several themes that it's implemented in. One of them is Material UI version 5, which is the latest version. So once you have that imported, we're going to come down here and add some properties to it. So inside of the form, oh, it's screaming. Yeah, it's because it's missing a few things. So the form is going to require a validator. So this is the JSON schema validator. This is going to basically allow the form to use the JSON schema to provide that validation for different data types and so forth and so on. And what we're going to want to do here, once I can have enough accuracy to click inside of that thing, is we're going to import the validator from, validate. It would help if I spelled it right. It would help if it showed up, but it didn't. So I'm just going to import it up here. We'll say import validator from that one, RJSF validator AJV. So this is just a wrapper around the AJV version 8 validator, which is the one that we're using for our version of JSON schema, which is, I believe, draft 7. So all you need to know is this is going to allow us to have AJV validation in our form. So, and it is required, but the reason it's not defined by default is there's like a few different versions, but we want the latest and greatest, which is version 8. So now what we want to do is we want to, let's see, we want to tell it, so because we're using a single form component, we want this component to change relative to the current part of the multi-step. So because our multi-step component is using these 3 schemas, we want the actual form to dynamically change relative to the schema that is currently being stepped into. So if I'm in step 1, then the first schema should show up, or it should be used to render the form, and so forth and so on for step 2 and step 3. So to do that, instead of just saying schema equals schema, which is what you would usually do, we're going to say schema equals schemas, as in the schemas array, at the index of, well, you guessed it, our current active step, which just means our active step. So I do need to say as object because of TypeScript. So now if I hit save, you'll see that the form that corresponds with the particular step is what shows up. So if I come over here and I hit back, it'll change the form based on the schema of that step. So yeah, there you go. That's the tutorial. No, I'm just kidding. So this is missing a few things. We do have a weird submit button. We have some HTML5 validation, which I don't like. So first, let's get rid of that HTML5 validation. And nice thing about RJSF is they have a prop for that. So we'll just say no HTML5 validate. Set that to false. No HTML fault. No, what am I doing? That should be true. Which, there we go. So now, sweet, we are no longer using HTML5 validation, and we can actually validate our forms. So we hit next, we hit back. Wait, where did my state go? Oh no, that's not good. So if I hit next and I hit back, you'll see that it actually cleared out the state. And that's because we're using a single form component, which doesn't persist the form data between steps. So let's go ahead and fix that. To do that, what we're going to do is underneath the active step state, we're going to define another state called form data. This is just going to take in an empty object, and this is going to contain the form data for all of the forms. So think about it like this. Instead of looking at the multi-step form as a single form, it's technically 3 forms combined into one single object, right? And what we're going to do is inside of the form, we're going to want to show the form data as it corresponds with the state object called form data. So when we hit save, we go next, type in a bunch of stuff here, next, back, well, it didn't persist. And the reason it didn't persist is because we're supposed to actually persist it in our handle next state. So if I hit, if I paste that there, and inside of the handle next parameters, we pass in new data, which is going to be type any because I'm lazy. What we're going to do is when we hit next, we're actually going to need to pass in the data that is in the form. However, the issue is we're not going to be able to do that when these buttons are isolated from the form, because this handle next will not have access to the form data. To fix that, we're just going to grab this box, cut that, and then paste it as a child of the form. And we're going to get rid of the on-click handle next on the button. This is going to make sense in a second. And instead, we're actually going to use the HTML5 form submit action on this button. So now this button, it will not run handle next. Instead, it will run the form submit action. And what we'll do then is when the form is submitted, so we'll say on submit, when the form is submitted, we will then pass in the form data to the handle next function. So when we submit, the form data will go to handle next. Handle next will take that form data, it will set the form data object with the data from that form, and then it'll move us on to the next step. Now, a key point here, this will only run if there's no validation errors, which is a good thing because we don't want to be changing our current step unless we don't have any errors. So I'm just going to save that. And here I'm in step 2. I'm going to hit next. It's going to scream at me. I want to get rid of this error list, and that's an easy thing to do. Right underneath the no HTML5 validate, I'm just going to say show error list equal to false. Save that. Get rid of that error list, so that's cool. So now, if I come in here and I type in an email, that doesn't look like an email because I have a special character there. And I have a special character there. There we go. Now, you'll see when I hit back, I persisted the form data state. Hit next. Now I can type in a bunch of other stuff here. And it didn't persist it because when I hit back, it clears it out with the assumption that you do want to clear it out. It should only persist the stuff that you save, which is what happens when you hit the next button. In this case, it says finish, but it's still the next button. So now it'll persist it. I'm not going to click this yet because I don't have something. I don't have a last schema. I don't have like a schema that shows up after this. And this will try to go to like a next step. So I'm not going to hit enter here yet, but that's basically the general idea. So now that we have our form data, we can go ahead and start cleaning up the rest of this. Okay, So I'm just gonna refresh the page real quick so we clear everything out. So what we want to do is, I'm thinking, what we want to do is we want to resolve this error that we have at the end. So if I just come in here, type in a bunch of stuff, um, go through this stepper. So this is just for the sake of getting through the validation. So validation's working here. I don't have these two passwords set up to confirm whether or not they're identical or not, because that's not in scope. And besides, this kind of validation should be handled on the server anyways. But if I hit finish, it's going to scream at me because there isn't a schema at the end. So what we want to do in that case is, on top of the form component, we want to add a ternary operator. We'll say if the active step is equal to the length of the schemas, length, not length. So we'll say length, wherever that is, there it is. Cool. Then, that's supposed to be a question mark. There we go. Then we're just going to say, I don't know, I'll just open up a React fragment. And in here, I'll just say that all steps are completed, I guess. So I'm just going to copy paste this from the doc site. All steps completed. I don't need that extra caret. And I do need to import typography. There we go. Oh, and I need to close the ternary operator. I also should probably put the typography inside of the fragment. That would be smart. So next thing I want to do is add an else. So else, then we can dump that form there. And now if we go through here again and we type in a whole lot of garbage because I got to get through that validation, hi@hi.com, and hit finish, and there you go. All steps are completed. But this does look kind of terrible, so I am going to import a component that I use elsewhere in the app, which is just the Monaco text editor, to show what the data actually looks like at the end. And I'm just going to paste that in there for demonstration purposes. I figured I'd do it this way myself. Actually, if I get 100 likes, I'll do a tutorial for the JSON editor, or for the Monaco editor in a React application. And I'll do a whole tutorial on creating this material UI site from scratch, as well as the dark mode, light mode, and everything. So that's not in scope for this tutorial specifically. This one's just for like quick and dirty forms. But yeah, if it's received well and if it gets like I said, 100 likes, I'm more than happy to do that. So go ahead and hit save, and you'll see now the Monaco editor shows up with the data from the form. So you'll see hi@hi.com, you'll see the date of birth and all that kind of stuff. And now you can extend this. You can like hook up an API to this if you want. Have it where when you submit, it actually sends this in an HTTP request to some server that you have that takes that on and does whatever it wants with it. But yeah, so